How the hell are we feeling here on a Monday morning?
I could have took today off.
What do you?
Yeah? Why is that?
Because my heart is a little broken.
Should we just get to
Before you speak about it, can I speak about it?
Sure.
I've been at Penn State twice now this year, and I really felt like this was the year, based on how Ohio State was playing, based on the changes that Penn State had made, that this was that year their opportunity. I even talked pretty highly about them this year coming into the season. And that game epitomized two things that I think have remained pretty consistent over this rivalry, if you want to call it that, the past decade or so under James Franklin. The first is, there's only been one time James Franklin's had a player who flat out just made plays and did more than what an Ohio State player did to win the game. That's Saquon Barkley back in 2016. Outside of that, when a play needs to be made, it seemed to be like it's an Ohio State player making it. Like the Igbinosun interception was unbelievable. However, that was also a drop. It was a good ball by Aller. It hit his hands, and then it hit his chest, and then Igbinosun, as he's falling, somehow catches it, gets one foot in bounds. Unbelievable interception. Probably the best play of the Ohio State season right now, and I don't think people talk about that enough, like how ridiculously acrobatic that was. And then the second thing was revealed in the goal line stand by Ohio State's defense, which it was a great stand by the defense. I just, for the life of me, I have no idea. I don't understand how this happens. Andy Kotelnicki is a really good offensive mind. Mm-hmm. But the guy who gets you down there, Tyler Warren, is not targeted, not giving an opportunity to rush, nothing. For 4 plays in the biggest moment of the game, of the season maybe, at this point at least, and you don't give him anything, that was, to me, an example of, and we talk about oftentimes in big games, like coaches make certain decisions and all that. That was mind-boggling. Like if you're James Franklin, you have to look at Andy Kotelnicki and be like, this ball's like Warren's in the Wildcat, right? Warren's the number one target on this, right? And maybe the pass play was because obviously Ohio State on 4th down had a good plan for him. But the previous 3 plays, you don't give him anything. Like I understand you've got 2 good running backs, but you've also got a guy who helped get you down there. So make him the Wildcat quarterback. Give there some sort of a read option off of it. I mean, I get it. Aller could have kept it on probably 2 of those and maybe gotten himself and didn't. Maybe he was asked to, maybe he wasn't. Either way, those were the 2 things that ultimately lost for them.
My takeaway from it was we were playing too conservative. I don't know what the stat is on how many times we tried to go downfield, but it just seemed as though to me we were managing the game so much that it allowed for Ohio State's defense to settle into how they were going to play Penn State. They did not stress the defense out or try to stress them out. I know everybody has the conversations about, well, what do we have in receivers and stuff like that. I think we got fine receivers, but I don't think that we came in with the game plan or the mindset to just be aggressive. I mean, if you look at how Oregon is playing aggressive football on offense. In order to be able to beat a team like Ohio State, you can't play 10 yards. Your deepest pass can't be 10 yards. You gotta force them to cover. And what you said about them not being able to or having trouble with a running quarterback, Drew Aller isn't a runner, but Drew Aller was still having a whole lot of success being mobile, running the ball when the plays broke down. So if you take the fact that we were being successful and being able to run in the passing game with our quarterback because of the way they were covering, and you're not stressing the defense out enough to pull them out of a defense that could stop the run. They neutralized our run because they were able to crowd the line. They were able to fill the line because we weren't really trying anything downfield. To me, I thought that was the biggest determining piece of it all, is that they allowed Ohio State to settle into a defense that they felt would be successful against us. And the only time we really did put their defense under duress is when we went to Tyler Warren and used him out of the Wildcat, and did different things creatively with him, moving around and with the ball in his hands. I don't know. My biggest question I came away from with this game, because I'm a big James Franklin fan. But for me, just the disappointment of the loss again, not taking a shot at Coach Franklin, because I'm definitely not taking a shot at him. But my biggest question leaving that game was, if we're going to always get conservative, because we're not conservative against other teams. The way we ran our offense prior to this game, we're not conservative. We push the ball downfield, we find balance. But we do it against a Michigan. We do it against Ohio State. So my question is are we looking at this as, okay, we'll get back to business as usual and play the games the rest of the way out? Maybe they win the rest of the games and make it into the playoff. But what do we do when we play against one of these teams in the playoffs? Are we going to go in there and are we going to be, conservative? I felt as though we were saving all of our calls, all of our firepower, all of our aggressiveness and calling plays. I thought we were saving it for this game, like this was the game. And that didn't turn out to be the case. And I think that has been ultimately, if you look at our games against these teams historically, we do not play aggressively offensively against these teams. That was my takeaway from it, because in stating that this was the year to beat Ohio State, Penn State was a better team than Ohio State. I'm watching the game. We're clearly a better team than what they were, and did not do what was necessary. I thought we were going to blow them out.
I told you when we were walking in, I said it was almost like Penn State got up 10-0. It was like, now what do we do?
Yeah.
The game completely changed after that. And I actually think, even though the score, it's a 7-point margin, I don't know that it was all that close. After that 10-point start for them, I thought they got totally outplayed by Ohio State.
It wasn't hard to outplay them.
Well, think about that. The Will Howard fumble going into the end zone. Yep. There was a 7-point difference there. I mean, you could have made the case there was plays both ways where the margin was kind of what it was at that point. But I do want to point out one thing, because this thing kind of bothered me as being a part of our show at Big Noon, is there's this big misconception about Fox and night games. And this week, by the way, Big Noon's doing Ohio State, but they actually had the chance to do Penn State, Washington. So I'll reiterate that. Joel and Gus could be calling the whiteout this week. It was decided not to call it. Which, by the way, that whiteout was scheduled back in September. A lot of people don't realize this, but there's a draft each week between the networks that have the rights to the conference. And this particular week, this past week, we obviously had the number one pick. But the whiteout's next week. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to move a game into a different window, you have to work with that network. So that's CBS, that could be NBC, depending on the timing of it. So there's certain mandates and restrictions based on the Big Ten media rights deal, meaning how it's lined up is essentially Fox at noon, CBS at 3:30, primetime NBC. So hence, you have NBC who picked it up and they're putting, the whiteout on Peacock. But that's the irony to all this. All the Penn State fans and kids who are like, oh, we don't want this game at noon. Dude, we get it. Everyone gets it. It's your conference, bro. It's also how the media rights deals work and the difficulty of moving around and putting every game you want at night. And I'll just say this, not to take a shot at Penn State, but why don't you try winning one at noon first before you worry about when the time of the game is? Win more. Maybe that That would be more of the issue. It's a team that you can't beat. Did you have to play them at night in order to beat Ohio State? Is that what it's really about? So that was the one frustrating thing, I think, is there's this narrative out there, and it's perpetuated by ESPN a bit because they want to continue to kind of blow that up, because the reality is ESPN is really no part of the Big Ten, right? They got out of it. They don't want to pay for it. So now they're out of it, but they're present, and they want to try to make it look like they're covering college football when really they're just covering the SEC. And they have the ACC too now, but that's who they highlight. Like they're all about promoting the SEC to make sure they get as many teams in the playoff as possible, and that's how they're kind of driving college football. Because the SEC's dominated college football of late, so you can understand that point. But that's the frustrating thing for us, like this past weekend, is hearing Penn State fans upset or students upset, crazy. And you're like, dude, there's way more to this. Like, again, Fox had the opportunity to call the whiteout this week. And to be honest, it's about ratings. This might shock people because it's TV, but it's about ratings. Ohio State will pull a bigger number at noon than Penn State, Washington will in a whiteout going up against LSU Bama. So that might frustrate people because they want this to be about something else other than like ratings and money. But dude, that's how this works. That's why the Big Ten's able to make so much from the TV media rights deal. So I get it when Penn State fans are frustrated about it. And trust me, like, I remember playing in night games. I remember how awesome they were. I also remember playing early in the day. It really didn't bother me either way. Like, I kind of always say it's tough to do a flyover at night, okay? Like, that. And by the way, the flyover for Penn State was as badass as it gets.
Dope.
I'll say this. I think I've talked to you before, LaVar, about, like, Tennessee and that game day atmosphere. I think Penn State might be number one for me now. Like, there's just something about the build-up, the team running out, everything, how that stadium looks. It's just, that to me is like one of the most special atmosphere in college football, I think. So I'm 100% drinking the Kool-Aid in that regard.
And we wasted it. But, back to the drawing board. I just wonder, if everything works out and we go to the playoff, I mean, what changes? We're playing a big major team. Is there any change? That's my biggest question. Like, will we?
I think you'll be in the playoff, by the way. I mean, you went out at 11-1. You're in the playoff.
Yeah, so do we play differently?
Manageable too.
But do we play differently? Do we play aggressively and go out like, listen, we're going to win playing aggressively, we're going to lose playing aggressively, but we're going to play aggressive. Can't sit on 10-point lead. I mean, and you can't win a game against a team like Ohio State without getting into the end zone as an offense. Like, that's just, I think those are real realities. That's all.
I thought a low-key thing, too, that surprised me was, like, the pick six, you kind of fooled Ohio State, kind of made it look a little bit like man, and then they baited Will Howard into that, and you get a pick six off it, right? After that, man, like, if you go back and look at the touchdown plays, the big chunk plays, it was all man-to-man. And we talked about it coming into it. Tom Allen played 50% of the snaps this season coming into the game in man-to-man. Ohio State's just not a team you can match up with 50% of the snaps in a game. Like, if you want to win, it's really, really hard unless you're like the Oregons of the world. And you're like, no, we feel pretty good, too, about our guys match up with your guys man-to-man. And Evan Stewart and Holden and all the other receivers for Oregon, they got the best of Ohio State that game. It was tight, but they got the best of them. In this case, I just feel like if you're Penn State, you've got to kind of mix up some things. I mean, at times, Chip Kelly almost wants to run the football stubbornly. And then other times, even when they're not able to do it, like find big plays, they try to force other things. It's almost like when Ohio State gets this idea of what they want to do, when I watch their offense, there's times where I'm like, just get out of your own way. But this was an instance where, like, every single time they were in man, they found the matchup, they found what they wanted to go after, and they executed. Yep. And you got to give them credit for that.
They did. And they went downfield. They did things to kind of mix it up. I just didn't feel like we had very many dimensions to our offense in the game. And that's unfortunate because, again, they weren't really able to run the ball. There were times where Abdul and company made big plays against Ohio State. Were there a couple questionable calls? I thought there were some questionable calls. You know what I mean?
That was a fumble, right?
Am
I crazy?
I thought it was a fumble. I thought that was a pivotal moment. I thought it was a fumble.
Well, the most egregious bad call was the Penn State defensive players getting up and walking over Carnell Tate.
Yeah, I mean, that was
I didn't think he did anything that warranted that.
It was very
I don't know if he was and I don't know if he was warned before. That's the only thing is if he was told that he was yapping or doing something and then that play happened and then the official's right there who told him, that's one thing. But, I mean, I don't know, man. You see guys walk over players all the time.
That's a big game, man. For them to call that.
To do that.
Yeah. It is what it is, though. I mean, hopefully they learn from it and they do better. Shouts out to Ohio State. They came into what I thought was the perfect setup to be demolished on national television, and they didn't allow it to happen. So, it is what it is. Super disappointing, though.
It's all right.
Yeah. Super disappointing.
Jonas, what were you thinking?
I mean, I was putting together a banger during that game on the JKS, so I was a little inundated with just. I
didn't see as many tweets or retweets of what people were saying to you. So.
Well, there was a couple. One of them I couldn't retweet because it was a little bit over the top. But yeah, a lot of accusations that I was at the Dodgers parade. A lot of. On inappropriate references. But nonetheless, I mean, look, the atmosphere at State College looked awesome. It didn't go their way. But you know what? You get it out of your system, and now we're ready to go here. Because you still got us far.
There you go.
Damn right.
Oh, I had a hell of a time. Didn't damper my spirits.
Damn.